Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to my studio. In this little lesson, we are going to be painting these beautiful roses. I've got out my paints, and I'm going to be using the Catalyst Wedge tool and probably a palette knife and a larger brush to create a loose and fresh painting with roses. Another thing I'm going to do is talk about what you do when you have a flower that has kind of two conjoining colors, like this one here. This rose has the red and then it goes down to the white, and how to create an interesting brush stroke or two with that. And talk about loading our Catalyst Wedge, or if you're using a paintbrush, you can do it the same way. We're going to talk about loading up our brush to create the impact of the color going onto the canvas and making that fresh brush stroke that captures some of the beauty of that flower. So I look forward to teaching you, and I thank you for your ongoing support of my channel. My goal this year was to get 10K followers, and I'm getting there quickly thanks to you. So stay tuned for a fun lesson, and we're gonna jump right in. Thanks for watching. Okay, so the kind of color I want to see is a kind of a grayish wash. So what I'm going to do is mix a little burnt sienna with this ultramarine blue, and I'm going to use a little bit of water in there. I'm just going to put that back down, and I will just give this canvas a little wash underpaint with that. So just get a little bit of the burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. If you're using oils for this, I highly recommend the same for the underpaint for the canvas. So just kind of go ahead and give your canvas a little wash at that. And it's kind of a nice neutral tone. Just going to mix a little more up. And you want it to be transparent. When I teach in-person classes, which I will be soon at the Scottsdale Artist School, so if any of you are interested, I'll be teaching at the Scottsdale Artist School June 21st and July 19th on a Saturday. So that should be fun. So when I do in-person classes, and I can watch people, what they go and do with this first layer is quite often they just use it goes on looking like this. I'll show you in one spot. It goes on about that thick. You don't want it that thick. You want it to be transparent like this. Okay, so then once you get that down, you go ahead and you can look at where your roses are going to be. I'm just going to quickly crop this to a square shape. So I'll go to my iPad and hit the crop. And then up here there's some squares. I'll hit crop to a square. And then I can hit done, or I can move my flowers in and out to, you know, really fill the canvas. So I'm just gonna maybe do something like that. You can play around with it, but now you can see it's cropped in like that. So I could even take my paper towel, and you can do this. People do this all the time with their oil paint, but you can do it with acrylic, especially if you have that little layer of retardant on there. It works amazing to keep the paint from soaking in and drying right away. Now you got yourself the same kind of effect that using the terp and the oil paint gives you. So I'm just kind of wiping away where those roses are going, and then there's going to be a lot of green, a few stems, and there's, you know, there's the edge of the vase. We could put that in there if you want. Sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. You just kind of go with the flow. So I'm leaving the rest of it on there like that, so that by the time I get to it, now it will probably be mostly dry, and that'll be good because I'm gonna paint the background over it. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I'm going to block in some of the green, and today I'll use my brush, and some of this sap green, I'll put it right into that other mixture, and I'll add a little burnt sienna so that I have a little bit more of a dull sap green. I don't want it to be so powerful. So I'm just going to go and block a few of those things in using this larger brush. And I'll put in those eucalyptus shapes and kind of go for that abstract look. And then I will do the rest of the details with the Catalyst Wedge tool. But in this lesson, I'm showing you kind of how you can be flexible when you're working with the Catalyst Wedge and larger brushes to create looser paintings. You don't have to set yourself up with a whole pile of new rules just because you got rid of a bunch of other ones. You kind of want to, you know, like you don't want to say, well, now I only can use the wedge, I can't use anything else. You want to use a variety of tools, including, if you wanted to, you can put a latex glove on and you can paint with your fingers if you wanted to. There's really no rules to painting, and I think it's really a privilege to be able to paint and just enjoy flowers, especially just enjoying nature in a whole different way when you're painting it. It's such a, I think if you can capture 10% of, or 1% of how pretty the flowers are, then you're going to be doing great. So I'm just going to clean that brush off for now, and I'll just put it aside. And now I want to start on the roses, and I'll just leave that for now. So I'm going to just quickly kind of wipe off some of that green, and I'm just using this Viva paper towel. This tray I bought at Michael's. These sort of plastic trays are really handy for this Catalyst Wedge painting. So now I'm going to look at the overall shape of these roses, and I'm just using this inexpensive paint from Liquitex. I'm using the primary red color, and I think I'm going to go to Michael's and buy a jar of it like this. This is the titanium white, so I'm going to go buy a big jar of it because it's a beautiful color, because it works like the Quinacridone red in far as it kind of gives you a really pretty pink. So I'm going to just block in with that Quinacridone red, and blocking it and putting it down quite, it's going on pretty thick because of the Catalyst Wedge. And I'm looking at the the various petals coming off of it and everything. And then after you put your first rose in, you'll get some of the green sort of on your wedge tool. Just give it a little wipe. One of the keys to painting is keeping your brushes clean. And then I will continue to block in. So I'm going to block in more paint here. I'm just all the different shapes. And even the wipe away gives an effect of that white, even though I'm going to show you how to load your brush. Always take advantage of all the things that happen by accident in your painting that are good. So you could leave that because it's an abstract, we're doing loose abstract painting. We don't need to, we can run with the little moments that happen that you go, okay, well, I knew I could do that, or I meant to do that moment. I'll call it I meant to do that. Don't let anyone know that it was a happy accident. It was a I meant to do it moment. So just keep going around. I'm already really liking this. This gives it a really nice feeling, that natural wash underneath. This little rose is more of a backdrop type rose. And then we got this one in front. And you can see I've just automatically kind of brought those flowers a little closer together than they are in the photo. I have a tendency to enlarge things a little. And one of my first lessons I took in oil painting at the Scottsdale Art School was from a really amazing painter, Joni Falk, and she looked at me and she said, your painting is going off the canvas, that you got to wipe that away and get that to fit in the canvas. And then she came around again because I left it the way, I just kind of like the flowers going off the canvas more. And she said, maybe you would do better with using a palette knife. And so, here I am years and years later, and that's kind of what I'm doing. So anyhow, now we've got all this base. Now we're going to work at loading the brush. And this is my first time trying this, so I'm going to make sure I get I always put 2 separate puddles of white just so I have a kind of a clean puddle. So I'm going to get a little dab of the white, and then I'm going to, this is all wet paint, so I'm going to pull that up, and this is an experiment, so I'm going to pull that into that wet paint, and same with over here. Pull it in, and over here there's some too. Kind of pull it up, and then I'm gonna go, and so far I don't mind that at all. And I'm gonna go back and add some more red back into it. And so I'm gonna go and get now some of that red, and there's kind of 2 petals here, so I'm gonna go and pull some of that back in, and I'll load my brush up again, and I'm looking at the edge of that petal, and I'm gonna sort of pull some of that back into the base. So once you pull it down, wipe it away, because you'll lose those stripes. So go back in and get a fresh, clean palette knife, catalyst wedge, and just sort of pull it back in. And look at that, you're getting these nice stripes. I'll see if I can zoom in for the next one. Okay, I zoomed in, and Gonna do the same here. Just gonna pull it down. Gonna wipe the white off again and get some more and pull it in. Like that, and then you can get a bit of more of that white to show some of the other petals that are coming around there. Same with over these ones back here. But you wanna, I know it's tempting to go and kind of readjust it. I have the same feeling, but you just want to kind of leave it like that for the, for the effect, and then go back later if you want and fix it. But for now, I want to leave it like that. And then I don't have any, I need sort of a dark shadow red. And with this, it's not as strong as I'd like. So I'm just going to go and grab some of that and I'll be right back. Okay, so I found some alizarin crimson paint just to get in a few darks that are going to add a lot of drama to these roses. I'm looking at some of these dark streaks that are down there, so I'm going to pull some of that up. And then once you get some white in there, you kind of have to get rid of it all or go to your, kind of remove what you can. I know I don't like wasting paint, so I always try to make the most of it. So I've got this alizarin. I see some dark shadows up here. I'm going to pull some of those edges in. And I'm just using the edge of my tool to kind of loosen up those strokes there. And then there's some darker moments over here. I'm just going to put in some marks there to show that. And then I'm looking at some of the little bits that are on the edges of the petal. I'm just gonna kind of mix a little bit of that alizarin so it's not so high contrast, dark and then light in these ones up front. And I'm gonna just dab some of the edges in there. Same with over here. And this one's a little dark, so I'm going to bring in some of that. So what you can do is just kind of look around and just add a bit of those. There's a little edge to one of the flowers there. I just add that in. There's a little edge there. And then there's a bunch of little kind of ruffles where all you're seeing is the top. So I'll just sort of dab some of those in. There. And while I've got some of that red on there, I'm going to just make a few little marks here and there. And even some of these stems, I'm going to get a little bit of that red and some of the burnt sienna and put in a few marks for the stems. Just kind of get the edge of your catalyst wedge and make some marks. And you can put in some of the little seeds there, the eucalyptus seeds. You could put a few of those. So, and then the stems of the roses, you could get a little bit of that sap green in with that red, because there's a lot of red kind of in the stem. It's like a light kind of green with some red kind of on top, almost layered in there. Just putting in a few more of the stems. And I'm going to put in a few of the leaves. And I'm going to look at now kind of cutting into where that rose is. And I'm just going to block in some real darker green underneath it, so it really pops out that the rose. And then we'll add some nice light leaves on top. Putting in some kind of abstract-y leaves here and there. Shape the rose again with the green. All right. I'm gonna now just kind of clean this green off a bit, because it's got, my palette knife got a lot of red on it too, so I'm just gonna clean that up a little. And I might go and use my paintbrush a little, just because I want to do some negative space painting. So I want to show you some of that. So I'll go back and mix now an opaque color that matches the background. So you're going to take the same colors you used to do the wash, the ultramarine blue and the burnt sienna, and you can add white to it. And now you're creating like the same color, but it's not a wash, it's an actual thick, color of paint. So you can even take a little bit of your glazing medium and give it a little bit of that. So I'll mix a little bit of that in there, so it just spreads easier as well. So okay, so you get some of that, and I'm starting with quite a dark layer of it, because you just want to test it out first. So, and I don't want it to be that dark. I want it to show the branches off a little, so I'm going to add a little more white to that. Okay, so now I'm going to look at some of those spaces, and I'm just going to leave some of either the branches I drew on, but then I can paint around and leave some space to show almost like branch shapes going in the background, just to add, you can see the different shapes. I'm going to add a little more white. And maybe a little more blue in there just for fun, and a little more white just to lighten it up even more, so we can see the contrast that we're creating by making the negative space. Just don't forget to give your paint a little spritz so it doesn't dry out. So just kind of pick a few. So that's what you call the negative space painting, to leave branches showing. It's, you know, a lot of great painters do that in landscape paintings, to show trees without getting too, kind of keeps it loose, and it gives it a really loose and free feeling, and kind of more of an abstract. So you can kind of pick and choose how much detail you want. You can leave some of it, take some of it away. This big brush is also like using the wedge, because it really fills in the space. You can always go over some of your shapes that you cut out with some lighter paint like this, and create almost a whole nother kind of layer and effect that looks just looks kind of more, I don't know how to describe it. Just, it looks, to me, it looks better than just a plain solid background. So I'm just kind of picking my way through and popping in some of those shapes, and remember to kind of create and kind of some lines and everything that, you know, go thinner to thick, or so they're not all perfectly the same. And I don't mind some of the green mixing in or painting over some of it. So it's giving a really kind of decorative feeling now. I sometimes will just mix up a little different version of the same thing, just to change it up a little. More negative space painting. Okay, so we'll leave that for now, and then I'm gonna go and we'll get some. Let me just put in the lip of this, just for fun. You can put in a little, infer that there's a little lip on that real now abstract vase. Okay, so you can keep working away on that. I'm not going to take up the whole video on that. I'm going to go back to the catalyst wedge, and I want to add some different colors of green to finish up the leaves. So I'll take a little bit of that sap green, and I'm going to use some cad yellow that's on. I've got kind of my really messy Masterson's Stay Wet palette down below with a bunch of paint, so I had a little bit of yellow. I'm just mixing up right into what was under there. There was some red, sap green, and that cad yellow. And I'm gonna now look at some of these different lighter leaves and put in some of those. So just sort of load up the brush a bit. And even some of those little bits of red in there really look good. And I'll maybe recalibrate that, get that stem showing a bit more. Put a few lighter marks in the vase. And I'm working on some of those leaves dripping down. It's one of the reasons I bought the eucalyptus leaf, is to add a little more drama to the bouquet, because the roses didn't, you know, their petals are beautiful, but then to have these kind of dripping down like that, I really like that. And I'll put a few more up here, even though all there is these ones showing. I'm gonna add a few more up here. A little more drama. And whoops, in there too. Let me just fix that. Put that back on so it doesn't try to get away. And then I'm going to mix in a little more yellow and sap. And I'm going to add some warmer green, these sort of warmer greens that come over the edge of the vase. Okay. And there's really nothing in that corner, but you could just throw a few greens in there too. And you might even take a little bit of that green and do those rows. I'm just kind of bringing some of that up into that rose there, just to show that that's kind of the back of that rose. Put a few of those little rose type sprigs in there. So we've created a really nice kind of abstract rose painting. I definitely think this is something, you know, that you should give a try, and don't be afraid. You could start and just do one rose and some of the green if you're intimidated by doing a large painting. Just give it a try, and let me know if you try it out and how it goes in the comments below. And of course, I'll have the reference photos and everything up for my Patreon members. And I hope that you enjoy this little lesson, and that you break out of your painting rut and try something new and try something fun. And I look forward to teaching you in the next video.